Hey, hello, good people, and welcome to another episode of The Flow. And this is going to be the very first in our series of candidates get to know your candidate podcasts. And today we have Coach Levon Barnes, who's running for the North Carolina House from Alamance County. And I'll ask him a little bit to tell us about the exact district because, there's been all this gerrymandering stuff that's been going on and redrawing of district lines. So to make sure that either you're in his district or you're not in his district, we'll get into that in some detail. But I want to say this as an aside, whether you're in Levon's district or not, whoever it is that's running for NC House in your district, support them because every vote counts. It's not, Levon is not going to be able to go down to Raleigh and make the changes all himself. He's going to need a good cadre of folks, who can get the numbers up. So, be awake, be aware, take a look at your candidates. And I want to introduce you to Levon Barnes, who has an amazing resume. And I'm going to say the first thing on the very, very top of his resume is humility. That would be the number one thing on the top of his resume because I had to pry, his resume out of him like with a fork. He's got all of these accolades and these wonderful things. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. He's got a master's in health education. He was coach of the year, teacher of the year, all of these amazing things, an amazing life, an amazing history. And he won't tell you anything about it unless you pull it out of him because what he says, I'm just a regular guy.
That's right.
And that's, when you think about it, for me, that's who I want representing me. I want somebody that, is me and represents me. And I'm just, I might be a podcast, but I'm just a regular guy. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Coach Levon Barnes. Say hey to the folks, Coach, and I'm so happy that you're here, and thanks for your time.
Well, Bob, first, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to talk to everybody who's going to be listening. Hey, I'm just a regular guy, just like Bob said.
So, I want to ask you some questions about growing up because I think, in my mind, we carry around with us both the child that we were, and we also carry around us the parents that we had.
Yeah.
And they all kind of live in us. And, a good friend of mine once said, when you say, I want something, I want to go to the movies, that's the old child in you talking.
Right.
And when you hear in your mind, well, you ought to be and you should be studying instead, well, that's your parent that you're carrying around in your mind as well.
Absolutely.
So the wants are the kid and the shoulds are the parents. And in the middle is the adult who figures it all out. And so I want to ask you a little bit about growing up. I know that as part of your resume, and I think we have to consider it part of your resume, your dad passed when you were 9 years old.
Yeah. I'm born
What
and
did that
raised.
tragedy teach you?
Yeah. Well, it taught me how to be a man early. Probably way too early in my life. I grew up in Staten Island, New York, one of the 5 boroughs. During the crack era, my parents, my mom was from Loudoun, South Carolina. My dad was from DC. Somehow they migrated to New York, and then they created me. I'm one of one, the only child. So, when I lost my dad when I was 9, it was one of those things where I had to be the man of that. Something told me I had to be the man of the house now. And at 9 years old, there's no reason why any 9-year-old should think that they should be the man of the house. But something was instilled in me, something was put into me to have to be a little bit more mature beyond my years. My dad was a pillar of our community. He owned I guess you would call it now a club, but a social club back then those days. My mom, she worked for the Department of Environmental Protection and as well as then retired as a executive assistant at Chase Bank in New York. But My dad and my mother are both community people.
Now, your dad had a store?
He had a what you call a social club. I would call it a bar, but but they had social events at night. He would do great things for the community. One of the more vivid memories that I have of my dad was, during Christmas time. The bar, I'm gonna just call it the bar. The bar was in a very crime heavy area,
Mhm,
but it seemed to be the safe space for a lot of black people. And so during Christmas time, Santa Claus would come in, and every kid from that neighborhood that and came there got a toy. He would make sure that Santa gave every kid a toy in the neighborhood, right? That's something that I vividly remember, even though I didn't know he was Santa Claus at the time, because I thought Santa
mhm.
Claus was Santa Claus, but he was the Santa Claus. And so that level of respect, I didn't realize until after he passed away, and people will come up to me and say, "Hey, oh, you're Joe Barnes' son." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, your dad was this, that, and the fourth." And I would hear all these different type of stories. And my dad was also a guy who gave people opportunities that most people would turn their back on. So that was, retired, former military guys that may have had some types of issues, that people would turn their back on. He would give them opportunities to be bar backs, as well as other people. Like he entrusted people to look after him the way that he was trying to look after them, and I could say for the most part that people did. And then, my
So
mom, yeah,
he changed lives.
he changed lives, and I really didn't know, that he was
Mhm.
doing all of that until as I got older and throughout my teen years. Yeah.
So, coach, let me see if I can draw a little connection here. You are a community leader. You're concerned with the community. You're a giving guy. You want to go on into politics and make life better for folks. And do you think there's a connection there?
Oh, I think there's definitely a connection. I mean, I think it is definitely in my spirit to be a servant leader. And
Hmm.
so my servitude now is just putting me into the realm of running for office ultimately. um,
Hmm.
because I know the biggest impact that I can have on my community, and now even so in the state of North Carolina, is to be able to have somebody who understands the everyday issues, the kitchen table conversations that people are having during this time, because I'm living through them myself. So,
Hmm.
what better representative could you have than somebody who's living what you're living?
Yeah, I mean, given the choice of somebody who can say, "Oh, I feel like I want to go on a cruise, so I'll just book one," and somebody that's got to save for it and plan for it and figure out if it's even a
Budget for it.
possibility. Yeah, that's two different lifestyles.
Yeah, definitely is.
And Dennis Riddle, I don't, I mean, he is your opposition, so it's fair to talk about him. Dennis is a real estate guy, if I remember correctly, and he's pretty,
He he lives nice.
he lives very well.
He lives very well. He lives very
He
well.
lives
He's got
very
a nice
well.
little compound down there. He's got horses. When people ask me about him, I say, "He's got horses." There's nothing wrong with having horses, but if you got
It's
horses,
just a different,
it's a
it's
different
just a different lifestyle.
yeah, it's a different
Does he
lifestyle.
remember?
Different
You
and,
know.
and to be honest, Bob, it's okay. People should have different lifestyles. The difference is that regardless of your lifestyle, if you decide to run for office, then you should want to be a person of people and not a person of a certain level of people, or you're just in that box and don't care about people. That's the difference. So whether I had $10 million or I had $10, if I sign up to be on the ballot and sign up and win the seat, I represent all of the people, and so I should want to be around and listen to all of the people.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things about being an American, being a capitalist, and being, a person who believes in free market and economy is that, the whole idea is that the people should be able to vote with their dollars to find out the best products and then, buy the things that work the best, et cetera. And that's the whole idea of getting better. And we want people to be successful and we want people to have horses.
Yeah, we do. I
Yeah,
want a horse.
we
My
do.
my daughter
I
wants a
want a
horse.
horse. I want a
Yeah,
horse too.
definitely.
What we don't want people to do is get out of touch.
Right. Right.
And you can tell. I think that you can tell if someone is in touch, with their constituents, or they're out of touch with their constituents, you know, based on the policies that they favor.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, that the other side is they just have a different idea about how to get someplace. I mean, this idea of trickle down
Trickle down
economy,
economics. Yeah.
trickle down economics, to me, is one way of looking at the economic spectrum. You know, bubble up is another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And one way is give all the money to the job creators, as they call them, the factory makers,
Yeah.
or give it to the consumers. And to me, I don't know about you, but it makes more sense to me. If you're going to give it to a guy whose factory is already producing enough widgets to handle the demand, he's not going to buy another factory with it. If you give it to the people that buy his product, and all of a sudden the demand increases beyond what he can do with his factory, he's going to build another factory. But anyway, let's don't let me get on my
No,
soapbox. This
man.
is your show. But what do you think about that?
I think that was a great analogy. I mean, I would ask the everyday worker how trickle down economics has worked over the last 20, 30 years since Reagan introduced it. Right. I would tell you that trickle down economics is just a catchphrase. It's a farce. We all know that the more people make, the more people are going to spend. So that also helps the bottom line of the person who's sitting at the top of a thing. I don't believe that. I do believe that if you build a company, you should make as much money as you can. However, if your bonuses are 2, 3, 4, or $5 billion or whatever the case may be, but the person who's actually doing the real work is still making 15, 25, I find that to be wrong. Um, I think that people who will get paid and paid well, people who get respected and also are able to grow within the company, work harder for you, and then they're more happier. And in turn, they're willing to do a lot more things for the company to make sure the company looks good. So I believe that, would you say bubble up? I believe the bubble up is a good thing. I don't believe trickle down has ever been good. And we're in the situation that we're in now where we have the first quote unquote trillionaire because of trickle down.
Hmm. So why do you think it is that, I mean, cultural issues aside, just looking at it from from the financial aspect, and then we'll get into the whole cultural thing. But just looking at the financial aspect of it, it seems pretty clear, that Democrats have always been the middle class, working class type of advocate, and Republicans have always been the job creators advocate, with the idea and the narrative that they put forward that if we help them out, it'll trickle down and everybody, a rising tide
Right.
raises all ships, kind of thing. But why do you think that folks still follow that idea when, years and years have gone by and it really hasn't proven to be helpful?
I mean, I think we're, we are guilty of being complacent. New ideas, fresh ideas sometimes bring about fear, and then we utilize fear to cause people to think twice about a thing. I could kind of compare it to like, there's this great cartoon that you see in the newspaper where somebody's digging for gold, and they're like one more dig away, but they stop, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
I kind of compare it to that. The person who continues to go and then finds the gold, That's what I feel like a lot of Republicans don't want to see is that everybody finding the gold. They only want some people to find the gold and not everybody to find the gold when there's plenty enough gold to go around for everybody. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think a lot of it is that we're stuck in what has been, and then when innovation happens, we kind of put a fear thing in there, but it's the people who like a Mamdani who right now, right, who ran on a certain agenda, and people were like, no, 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 and then he's following through on his agenda. Now people are like, wow, that's really not as bad as I thought it was, and now I think it's spawning a whole new generation of what America could be.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. Let's talk about some of the cultural things. It seems to me that um, a lot of the disparity in people's views come come about because of cultural issues. And I think that maybe, well, what do you think? Do you think that these cultural issues, like whether a person's gay or not, or whether the gay person should be a member of a church, or things like that, especially the abortion question, and like, they seem to have been more important about in dividing people than really the financial and productivity aspects, of our politics. What do you think that's all about?
It's fear. Again, everything is all of the things that you just talked about, whether or not somebody's gay, somebody's trans, it's fear, right? We live in a quote unquote free country, where you do your thing. That if it don't affect me, then it's what it is. But we've come to get into this cultural war of, who's more Christian than the other, and who belongs, you know, how do you identify yourself? At the end of the day, to be honest with you, nobody really gives a shit. Nobody gives a crap. Okay. All right. How many, I kind of push back on people, especially, I get a lot of questions about, even today, about trans folks in bathrooms in schools. And as somebody who's been teaching for 23 years, um, and in public schools, I can count honestly on maybe two hands in those 23 years of of a trans student asking to use their preferred bathroom. Okay. And I push back on people who say, oh, it's rampant. I said it's not. When you go in the bathroom, have you ever seen a trans person in your life? Nine times out of 10, they can't tell me they have. So, but yet, if you listen to certain people, I mean, it's running rampant. It's not true. It's fear. Um, you know, they are a human being just like I am, and they should be treated with respect, just like anybody else should be treated with respect. Now, when we're uncomfortable about a topic and we don't educate ourselves about said topic, this when we have misinformation and we have stereotypes and we have all this other stuff. But when you sit down and you talk to a person who who is just going through their life and trying to be who they are, I think a lot of those fears calm down. But we do spend a lot of time based on news media algorithms, all the things on divisive cultural politics, more so than can this person provide the great service that I'm asking them to provide when I go to the store. If they're an architect, can they still are they building this thing the way that it needs to be, that's safe? We're not thinking about it in that aspect. So yeah, we got to get out of the cultural stuff. It's a distraction, and we need to get more into community and understanding who people are, meeting people where they're at, and that's what I'm about.
What does that mean, meeting people where they're at?
I mean, I think that means you know, I'm gonna take it from a teacher role, right?
Okay, fine.
When a student comes to me, um, let's just say the first day of school, first week of school, whatever the kid, like it's my job to get to know my student to see where they're at in their life. I don't assume that a kid has all the things. I don't assume this or that. I can get a file on a kid that tells me that this kid has, autism or whatever the case may be. But like until you actually get to know a person and understand their story, that will help me guide them to where they want to go. So meeting somebody where they're at is not judging them by what you see outwardly, but having a conversation with them and understanding their story so you can figure out like how can I help you? Where can we help each other in a path? Yeah.
So, so you mentioned that word path. What do you think the path forward looks like? I mean, we're
And
coming out of some pretty difficult times.
some people would say we're still in some difficult times.
Well, yes, no, I think that that's much more accurate to say. Um, but let's talk a little bit about your plans, and your path forward. You're looking at affordability is one of the things that's very, very, you're very passionate about. So speak to us about what you mean by affordability and what you think can be done to ease the stress of, making the bills at the end of the month for most of the folks in your constituency.
Absolutely. Well, affordability is a very catch phrase. It's very generic. I kind
Hmm.
of want to pivot from affordability to the acronym I like to use the most is COLE, cost of living emergency. Most people right now are in some kind of cost of living emergency, meaning that their income and what their bills are either equaling out or they're in a negative. So we have an affordability crisis or a cost of living emergency for a lot of people in this county. That's working class people. That is people that are salaried as teachers, that are first responders, all the way down to the person who's working in our fast food restaurants. Right now, everything is just too high. Gas is too high. Groceries are too high. Your utility bills are too high, and everybody's doing all of what they can to try to just pay off that. But what I'm seeing in the North Carolina General Assembly is a lack of care, a lack of humanity, and a lack of foresight of helping people be able to thrive and not just survive. So things that I would like to see is that number one, we have to raise the minimum wage in this state. Right now, the minimum wage in the state is $7.25. It's the same as the federal minimum wage, and that hasn't moved since Obama in 2008 or 9. Okay. I want to see the state minimum wage be raised to at least $20 an hour. And
Now, a lot of people are going to balk at that. They're going to say, "You raise that minimum wage to the guy at Wendy's who's, slinging a hamburger to $20 an hour. My Wendy's hamburger is going to go up, and I'm going to have to pay more for that." And
well,
people are going to balk at that. So, how does that make sense?
well, we wouldn't be in that situation if we were incrementally raising minimum wage to begin with and weren't stuck on 725. I mean, we weren't living with that same worker during COVID had to go to work. Let's think about that. That same worker that is making your burger during a pandemic still had to go to work. Those folks who worked in Walmart, in Target, whoever, still had to go to work. Okay, so like I don't look at it as, oh, my burger's gonna go up. I look at it as the person who's making my burger is also working at that job, that another job, and this job. What happens if they could just work at one job, right? Um, so I look at it as this is what it's going to take to actually live in North Carolina, live in Alamance County. You have to make at least $20 an hour. Right now, most businesses are paying somewhere between 15. Some of them are even paying 15 to 17 an hour. So it's not like we can't do $20 an hour. It's a want. Do we want to do $20 an hour? And so, yeah, I mean, that's one thing. The other part of that is on affordability is we need to create a fair wage tax system. In North Carolina, we are sitting at almost, I mean, businesses are damn near paying no taxes, corporate taxes. And now we're going to try to eliminate personal income taxes in a way. We're at like 3.99%. Well, I don't want my taxes to go up. I don't want your taxes to go up, Bob, but let's be realistic. If our taxes don't go up and they just stay where they're at, how are you paying for that first responder? Those first responders, how are we paying for our schools? How are we paying for our roads? How are we paying for all the things that some people may take for granted? But if an emergency happens, you're going to be wondering why you can't get what you need because we can't afford it because we can't pay the people to be able to do those things, or we
Yeah,
can't get the
yeah.
products.
Well,
So
the old expression of a pound wise and a pound foolish is that, like you say, that guy now who has being paid $20 an hour. Maybe he doesn't have to have his wife working two jobs, which means he can be home when she's working and she can be home when he's working. If they're both working two jobs, they have to get childcare. And then the money goes out there, and then the kid doesn't get the proper education. Then the kid grows up without the proper values and morals because there's nobody at home to teach him. And he winds up getting in trouble. And then we have an exploding population of folks that need more attention, social workers. I'll tell you this, I work in the courts, Coach, and in the last few years, I worked exclusively in the Department of Social Services court. The people that I represented were parents who had either neglected or abused their kids, and they were taken away by the Department of Social Services. And they generally are given about a year to get their act together to see if they can get their kids back. And my job, much more than fighting the Department of Social Services, was to work with those folks and help get them into shape so that everybody could say, yeah, you solved your addiction problem, you solved your anger management problem, and you can have your kid back.
right,
Which is what everybody wants.
yeah,
Ultimately, if you ask anybody, right wing, left wing, Republican, Democrat, everybody wants people to get in shape and be good parents so they can get their kids back. I mean, that's what everybody wants. And it's a lot cheaper when they get their kids back. If they don't, and the stresses that you're talking about are what lead people into abusing substances, lead people into being stressed out and having anger issues and the like. So there's a lot of stuff that I think we don't, as you suggest. It may be that the person, maybe my hamburger's going to go up a few pennies, but if in the long run, that means that there's less people coming through the system and I'm saving on that end, it's a net win for everybody.
well, you hit on a couple of points. Appreciate the work that you do in social services because obviously, as an educator, I work with social services a lot, and
Mhm.
not only are they overworked and underpaid, the people who work in social
Overworked.
services, but we also have a social work shortage.
Mhm.
Um, we have child investigators shortage, like all foster cares are through the roof, and a lot of that's because we're not paying people
Mhm.
their worth
Mhm.
to be in those critical positions. We don't give enough money to those things. So when we're talking about mental health care,
Mhm.
that is something that I think mental health care is a human right. I'm a big proponent of getting therapy. I have a therapist. I've had one for since probably COVID, but it took a long time for me to even think about having one because I've always was taught not, culturally, that's not the thing. However, it is so hard for somebody to get mental health care because they can't
Mhm.
afford it because the insurance don't cover it. Um, so when we have addiction, people who are on drugs is escaping a thing. Nobody wakes up to say, "Hey, I want to be a drug addict."
Right. Nobody
Right?
does.
Nobody wakes up in the morning and say, "Hey, I really just want to be a drug addict. I really want to be strung out." No, it's an escapism. There's something that's deeper there that if it was handled, some type of mental health situation that was handled earlier, they might not be in that situation. They might not be in that thing. You know, if they were getting, maybe if they were getting, they lost their job. I look at it from a human approach in all that I do. I try to, because I work with people every single day that are doing the best that they can with absolutely nothing. And what I mean by that is I have educators, I have friends, colleagues of mine who are working 3 or 4 or 5 jobs and they still come to work and work with a kid. I have educators who are living in their car and taking showers at the T&A and coming to, like, in what world is that appropriate? It's not. It's not. And so I look at all of these things, all of these breakdowns in these systems, these systems that we have in this state and in this country is because we have a lack of care. We have a lack of want to be able to help those that are in need, which is the point of paying our taxes, is to help people. It's not handouts. It's to help folks to get through that addiction, to help folks be able to get those opportunities to get jobs. Is to help young people have the programs that they need so they can dream bigger than where they're at right now. That
Hmm.
would prevent a whole bunch of stuff, and it would cost us less money
Hmm.
if we just had those types of programs and systems in place. And you just got to have people who are willing to talk about those things and advocate for those things, and then also put money behind that.
Yeah. And it's a hard it's a hard shift in thinking, because we're so acculturized to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and get out there and make it for yourself and make it on your own and be the Marlboro man, sitting
Yeah,
up on the
yeah,
horse, with the
yeah,
fur collar and smoking your cigarette,
right,
being the lord of everything that you look at.
yeah.
I think the Marlboro man did more to define American masculinity than any other single icon.
Well, yeah, that Marvel. I remember seeing that in New York, the all on the billboards and
Marlboro.
stuff like that. But
But in Norway, they have they have very little homelessness. Very, very little homelessness. And the reason they do is because they found that it is cheaper to put somebody in a stable home than it is to constantly have them coming into emergency rooms and being treated in rehabs and out of rehabs and committing crimes and doing all of those things. It's cheaper to put them in to build affordable housing and put them in stable homes where you can find them, give them the services they need, and make them into productive people. It's a whole lot cheaper to do that than it is to deal with the problem on the street.
and it's amazing why they live longer than we do too. So out there in Norway. But yes,
Yeah.
Bob, you're right. I don't understand how other countries get it right and we get it so wrong. And we are the richest nation in the world. We are the United States. I've traveled to every continent in this world except Antarctica, but I will go there. Um, and every single time that I've gone to a different country, I always come back home with a better understanding of how lucky I am that I do live in the United States, and why people around the world look at the United States as a beacon of, well, not right now, but a beacon of hope. Um, and it's because, like, it's a land of opportunity here. It
Mhm.
is the you do have the underdog story that you were talking about, the pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and you can go from being dirt poor to discovering something and being wealthy, right? And not many
Mhm.
countries have those opportunities, but the United States does. Um, and the fact that we do not do enough care for individuals, it's kind of like that's when we get laughed at. So things like housing, housing people who do not have homes, most people would think that, oh man, they're going to be desolate. They're going to mess up the area. They're going to do all. It's going to be all these problems. That's not true. That's not true. Most people, if they have a home, if they have hot water, they have opportunity, and they're getting the services. On top of that, they're getting job training services. They're getting the mental health services. They're held to a standard. They're held to a standard. They're held accountable. They're not just
Hmm.
thrown in a home and you say, we're going to leave you there. No, they're getting services on top of that. It's amazing how many probably turnaround stories that they have in
Yeah.
Norway that
And
we struggle to have here in the United States.
yep. And one of the things that I think is problematic in the United States is that we have these two big narratives, between the right and the left. And I will tell you this. I'll make a confession to you, Coach Barnes. I am a dyed in the wool, ya kumbaya, tree hugging liberal. I am.
All right.
But I'm also somebody that used to love the Republican Party because they were the penny watchers. They were the ones who were watching the money, and it was more important for them to be fiscally conservative. And my, love and passion was the safety net. So they trusted me when the country works well together. They trust me to take care of the safety net, and I trust them to take care of the purse strings. And therefore, I don't have to worry about that, and they don't have to worry about this.
Yeah.
But lately, it seems that the Republican Party is not that anymore. It's not conservative. It's not fiscally conservative. And it seems to be just totally mired into all of the cultural issues. So now, I have to watch out for both the safety net and I got to watch out for the fiscal conservatives. And I'm finding that a lot of Democrats are more fiscally conservative now than Republicans. Is that something that you're seeing?
Well, yeah, I'll admit that I'm fiscally conservative with my money sometimes. Yeah, I think we have a change in dynamic in our politics. We have extremes on both sides. Um, and specifically within the Republican Party, uh, when MAGA came up to be, well, first it was like Tea Party and then, then MAGA came in the world. It moved the Republican Party so far right that I think regular conservatives had no choice but to shift, or they were going to lose in elections or lose a thing. So they just kind of shifted it. I don't believe that a real conservative is about what MAGA is about.
Mm,
I don't. I think most conservatives right now, the ones that I've talked to, because in my campaign, I am getting Republican support because I think that they're
hmm
just sick of like the status quo. It's not working. And with Democrats, um, you know, we have far left, progressives, and I would put myself more in a progressive world. But at the same time, I believe in progress. I don't think we should just go straight from this to that. I think we have to progress to that way. And I think when we do have conversations on both sides of the aisle, we are all better for that. When we don't have super majorities on one side or the other side, and they make and then they gerrymander and make it so like only one side can ever run a thing. America has never been built on super teams. America is built on underdogs, grit, competitiveness, and they want that. And once we can get back to that, then we could probably get back to being the America that we always wanted to be. But right now it's so partisan right now that it's we have to get rid of one ilk, and I think it'll kind of get back to its homeostasis, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that about, there's extremism on both sides, but I kind of like, I kind of feel like pushing back against that because There might be extremists on both sides, but they're not equivalent.
No, I don't think
I
they're
mean
no.
I mean, the extremists on the left, may say, well, if somebody wants to be trans, that's their business. If somebody wants to have an abortion, that's their business. I feel this way about what I feel, and I am happy that I'm allowed to feel the way that I want to feel,
Right,
and believe in what I want to
right.
believe in, or not believe in anything if I want to. And that's the extremist on the left.
Yeah,
On the right, the extremists are malicious and insurrectionists. So I don't see that that's an
you're right.
equivalence.
Yeah, I don't see it. I see it the same way that you see it. So I hear a side all the time that talks about freedom
Mhm.
and my freedom and the Constitution and this and that. And yet every law, every bill, every conversation that they have is about restricting freedom, taking away freedoms, uh, doing away with freedoms. That is the Republican Party that I see today.
Today,
That's the
today,
Republican Party that
yeah,
I see today. I see
to see
people who are
today.
willing to listen to one man's dictatorship ideology, and the sycophants that follow that are believing that we are in this cultural civil war that he's putting out there, and that if you believe that trans rights are human rights, that 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 somebody should get killed for that. You know,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm the enemy within. Do you feel like you're the enemy
no,
and want to destroy America?
no. I mean, I want to make America better. I want to make America more free and fair. Because be honest with you, I feel like a lot of people of color, especially black people, have gripes, rightfully so. When you have somebody that's saying that slavery ultimately didn't happen, or that we wanted slavery to happen, and then you don't want us to teach about slavery in school, I have a problem with that. You
Mhm.
can't say that you can't say and talk about America without talking about slavery. You can't talk about America without talking about um, the freedom movement, the civil rights movement, all of these things.
And those are the things that make us strong. And, I was in Germany, I was traveling in Germany, and if you walk around many of the towns in Germany, you'll see these little brass plates that are out in front of various homes. You'll just be walking along, and all of a sudden, you'll spot one in the cobblestones, and here's this brass plate. And on it, there's a name. And what that brass plate represents is that a Jew lived in that house
Mm.
who was taken out and killed. And the Germans say, this was our sin. That was our trauma. We're going to look at it. We're going to acknowledge it. We're going to make sure it never happens again. And we're going to work through the healing of the trauma.
Right.
And if you look at an individual has to do the same thing. Somebody that has experienced trauma, eventually they have to come to terms with it,
Right.
say yes it happened, and then move beyond it. What we're doing, it seems, trying to hide these things, is what very sick people do about trauma. They deny it. They say it didn't happen. They put a stiff upper lip. They go on through world brass white knuckling it, and the like. So I mean
Yeah, that's what we're seeing.
that.
What we're seeing is we're seeing what misinformation, fake news, as he would like to say, but the fake news only comes out of one side. We're seeing the deletion of history, and I think it's a mental health issue.
Mhm.
I really feel like folks who have bought into what Trump and others have brought into this country, I think they will learn at some point that they made the biggest mistake, because a lot of the things that Trump has opened up is the worst of America. It's really the in my opinion, it's the we're going back to a time that he's also trying to say didn't happen. He wants us to be divided culturally, racially, the haves and the have-nots. Like it's but a lot of the people who are fighting this war for him are the same people that are hurt by his policies.
Yeah, this is an odd thing.
Right.
This
So
is
I
an odd
feel
thing.
like it's a mental thing when he says like such and such, oh, I'm the greatest. Like, no, you're not but people believe it
Yeah,
because he
yeah.
said it, it must be true. And it's not based on actual fact, it's just based on the fact that he said that.
He said it.
And
He
and,
said it.
and so like, yeah,
Um, it
I think that America right now, we're at an inflection point. We always talk about this
mhm.
election is the biggest election of our lives, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like you got to get out there and vote. Y- Yes, this midterm is huge. We have to mobilize and go vote because we're at an inflection point of. I think America is tired of waking up every day thinking about what the hell did he do, say, or whatever. I think that as much as folks may or may not like Joe Biden, but the 4 years that we had with Joe were productive. People didn't lose sleep. We passed major legislation. Um, like it was like a calmness that set over America for 4 years, and then we got this again.
Mhm.
And I think people have reached their fill because the policies that are coming out of not just the federal, but the policies that are coming out of the GA in North Carolina that are direct reflection of what he wants in DC are hurting so many people, regardless of ideology, regardless of economic status, regardless of anything. There is your pockets are being felt. Farmers are not able to produce their crops because we're in extreme droughts. They're not getting any relief.
And they can't get the fertilizer
And get
out
the
of
fertilizer,
the Straits of Hormuz.
not to mention tariffs. Like all of these things he thinks are good, but they were never good. And that's the problem that I have with politics in general, is that you have a whole bunch of people who play politics, but when you play politics, it costs people their lives. It costs people their
Now,
livelihoods.
let's get down to earth here, though. You're talking about Trump and federal policies and things like that. You're running for the NC House. How do you think the tone that's set in Washington, do you think that trickles down into the state legislators as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I have
Do you
facts on
think
that.
that
We have facts on
do
that.
you think do you think that um, there comes a point in a state legislator's mental progress where the silo effect of Washington, in other words, if I'm going to believe this and I'm going to believe this, then I have to deny this and I have to deny that, and that kind of puts me into a more narrow and more narrow and more narrow way of thinking, which is what is creating some of the problems in the state. So, do you think that does trickle down? The tone of Washington trickles down into the state
I mean,
government.
no question about it. I mean, when Trump says gerrymander a district so I can get another vote for the midterms, and then they go do that, and yet they don't pass we still the only state in America that doesn't have a budget. I think
Yeah, what
think
about that? Talk
I
about
think
that.
I think all of that plays into what's going on in Washington. They have spent the G8 just passed an elections bill, or it just passed through the Rules Committee, which Dennis Riddell sits on. So he voted yes to literally restrict how Board of Elections promote elections, that they can be banned if they promote voting.
Wow. In our state.
In our state. It's going to pass.
What else is going on? Tell me, what else is going on that we don't know
You
about?
have you have that we just have, I think, 3 or 4 veto overrides as of today, that the governor has vetoed, and then, it was overridden by the Republicans, which they also needed like 1 or 2 Democrats to cross over, and 1 or 2 Democrats who are no longer going to be in their seats come January. They voted to repeal the governor's veto out of retaliation and not out of anything more than that, on things like 18-year-olds being able to have concealed carry. They vetoed that sheriffs must cooperate with ICE. Like some of the regressive intentional bills, like getting rid of DEI, things like that. Like all this stuff comes down from the top. It trickles down to the state. It does no good for people in the state when we have dumb laws like this. Instead of saying, hey, we need to pass a budget. Still haven't 1,000 days since we haven't passed the budget. Over 400 days since a budget was due. So
what's that about? What's that about?
It's want to. Like, you can't blame Democrats. The Republicans control both houses and the Supreme Court in North Carolina. They're fighting amongst each other over things. And so when I talk to people about what has the Republican Party done for North Carolina that has been beneficial to most North Carolinians, nobody could really name a thing, and they've been in majority for 16 years. So like it is about again, changing the people in the seats is hard because they don't pay legislators but $14,000 a year. Probably one of the lowest paid GAs in the country. So that eliminates any regular working class person from being able to compete, because how are you going to live off of that? Can't. So you have a GA that's 7.
When you say GA, that stands for General Assembly.
Did you have a general,
okay.
a state house, a state senate, where the average age is in the high 60s and 70s? In a state that is going to be the 7th most populous state in like the next 20 years, which you have so many new young millennials moving in, and the representatives have no idea about what's going on in their communities because they don't have to. They don't have to do anything because they've gerrymandered so bad that all they got to do is put their name on the ballot and that's it. So that's where people like myself come in, and I challenge that, because I'm sitting here saying, like, the decisions that you're making today, they may not affect me and you, Bob, as much as it's going to affect my daughter, your grandkids, or my students down the road. I want my daughter to be able to experience North Carolina in all of her beauty without having to struggle. And
you just said something about gerrymandering, which I think brings it home to a lot of people who may be the recipients and the ones who benefit from that gerrymander. In other words, if I gerrymander an area so that if I'm a Republican and I gerrymander the state so that I ensure that there is a Republican majority in the Senate, that's the idea. So why would I care about gerrymandering if I'm in the majority, if I'm the one benefiting from it? But you just said something which really clicked in my mind. You said, why should the representative care if his seat is assured. If he's got a safe seat and he's know that he doesn't have to think about the other side's ideas, he doesn't have to think about democratic thinking, he doesn't have to, begin to open his mind and his heart up a little bit. He doesn't have to do any of that. He just gets more and more entrenched into his silo, and then he becomes not accountable. And I tell you what, if I have a business, I want my employees to have not a lot. I don't want to be a fearmonger, but I want to have them a little bit of fear that they could get fired.
Right.
And legislators don't have that.
No, they don't. That's why I'm saying.
At least the majority.
That's what I'm saying. They're playing politics. They're playing politics because they have nothing else better to do. And they're not going to really live out and see the demonstrative decisions that they're making now. I think about Valerie McNeil. I think about Valerie McNeil whose utility bills in a 1-bedroom apartment is $600. Well, why is it $600? Well, they voted to allow Duke Energy to be able to raise their rates because they're getting paid by Duke Energy to make bad decisions. So why do they care? But for somebody who is in a Valerie McNeil's position, they can't afford to pay $600. And we're talking about a 1-bedroom apartment, right? Like, if you talk to other people, it's astronomical. They have to make critical decisions right now. And nobody's thinking about that. Nobody in Raleigh is able to make decisions or are thinking in that aspect because they don't have to. They don't have to pass a budget. You know why they don't want to pass a budget? Because I'll tell you, they don't want to pass a budget. The biggest part of the budget is education. It's probably the biggest meat and potato of our state budget, right? You're a business guy. If you don't pay your taxes for a couple of years, IRS says, hey, Bob, you need to pay your taxes. What taxes do you think that they're asking you for? Are they going to ask you for they're asking you just for that year, or they're going to hit you for all the years?
Right.
They're going to hit you for all the years. So I work for a whole year, and they're going to toy around and say, we're going to give an 8% raise to teachers, which is really not a real raise because it's split over 2 years. So it's 4%, 4%. Most people just think of the whole number. They're not understanding it's over a 2-year period. Still keeps us at inflation. But you're not going to back pay me because you don't want to back pay me for the entire year because you want to play games. Now, in what world do you work a whole year, they pass a budget, and then you're going to say you're not going to get the back pay based on the raise that you're supposed to get from that year? That's going to piss you off as a worker. You're not going to get nothing out of me. These folks out here in Raleigh want to make life harder because they know if they make life harder, you're less likely to want to go vote. That's what they assume. Because you can't go vote because you got to go work 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs. They want to restrict the number of hours that you can go vote from 8 to 5. What are most people doing from 8 to 5? Working. They do these things on purpose, and they expect people to just live with that. I don't want to live with that. You don't want to live.
Well, I think they're in for a surprise because if you look at Project 2025, again, looking at the federal government, and Trump has said, actually, this has come out of his mouth, is his own words. He was asked once, why are you going to make it harder to vote? Isn't that going to keep your people from voting as well? And his answer was, Republicans will jump through any hoop they have to jump through to vote. But the lazy Democrats, if you put a couple of obstacles in their path, they're just going to give up. That is the basis for making it harder to vote, because they think that their people are so passionate that and I think they're going to be surprised, because come the midterm, I got a feeling that they're going to find a whole bunch of passionate Democrats that are willing to jump through any hoop that they put in front of them.
Not just them. I just think they're gonna find a whole bunch of Republicans that are
Yeah.
just tired of that,
And
that are gonna close their
independents.
eyes and bubble in the opposite, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
I believe in America's resolve. I still have hope for a better tomorrow, because if I lose hope, then I might as well just die. I might as well just
Mhm.
stop, teaching. I might as well just stop parenting. I might as well just stop a lot of things, right? I believe in America's resolve because I think, again, America has been built on competition. It's been built on the fact that we don't believe in kings or queens, that we're stronger together than we are divided. And regardless of it all, Trump, he's going to die at some point. He is going to no longer be the president at some point. There will be somebody that is going to be new. And it's just going to depend on how much cleanup do we have to do based on this ideology. Project
Mhm.
2025 was before Donald Trump. People would just be like, "Oh, Donald Trump." Donald Trump is a mouthpiece. There are people above.
Well, he's a symptom.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
symptom. There are people who've been working on this for decades, and and they were smarter than they caught Democrats on their heels, because Democrats did get lazy. Our messaging is not the greatest all the time. Um, And we're also very apologetic sometimes. I think sometimes we're too apologetic. I think sometimes we need to take that page from the other side, and say what we want, say it with our chest, and do it. I think that's what you're
Right.
seeing with Mom Donna. I think that's what you're seeing, in a lot of ways, with a lot of the wins that are happening in Republican districts. You're seeing a change of atmosphere. People want a breath of fresh air. When you're still breathing this same stale old air, you get tired of that, you get complacent. You want the new thing. What's the new thing? And so I think that
Right.
in my race in particular, I bring a new thing. I bring a new, fresh perspective. I energizing young people, energizing our seniors, energizing just people, because I think they want leaders they can relate to, and they can have a beer with, they can laugh with, that's going to be on the scene, and not just somebody who's in their own little window. And I think that's what we're going to
Yeah.
see in November.
I just had a wonderful conversation with a fella who's a big hip hop promoter. And we had a great conversation about, well, to explain hip hop, he said, rap is a style. Hip hop, and it's part of hip hop. Hip hop is a culture.
Right.
It's the over, and eventually, I kept down and said, so tell me, what is the theme? What is the essence of hip hop? And he said, oh, I can tell you what that is, because that's been defined and that has been steady for years. It is peace, love, unity, and having
And
fun.
having fun. That's right. And having fun. And I want to be able to have fun. I want to bring fun back into politics. I want to bring a sense of groundation back into politics. I'm not a politician. I'm a regular guy who just believes that my purpose is bigger than me, and that my job has always been to lay footprints in the sand for others to follow, and then they take over. I just believe, like, if people are afraid to speak up, then I speak up for them.
Right.
And
Coach,
yeah,
let me ask you this. Um, you decided that you're going to run for the NC House. Okay. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, he's running for the NC House. Big deal." He's real ambitious, or he's got a big head, whatever, whatever, whatever. But I don't think maybe they stop and realize what that really means in terms of time, effort, and treasure. Could you tell me a little? Can you share what it is like to run for office and the time and commitment that it takes? I mean, it ain't a little bit. Tell
Well, I
us,
really
share with us, what is it like
that question really
to
should
run
be
for office?
that
What's your typical day look
that
like?
question really should be posed to my wife, because at the end of the day, she's the one that can't stand any of this. But a typical day, I mean, honestly, running for office is not for the faint of heart. And especially if you're running for office and you're going to win. A lot of people could put their name on the ballot and do absolutely nothing, and it's whatever. But if I put my name on the ballot, is I feel like I have the weight of not just my team, my staff, but the voters that are looking to me to be their person. And so a typical day is going to be like, uh, I'll wake up early in the morning. I'm checking my email, what email so have dropped through. So I'll spend 2 hours, depending on if I have questionnaires that I have to do to get endorsements. You spend a lot of time on that. I do every last one. I don't have a staff person that does that. I do that. 2 hours of making calls for fundraising. Then another 2 hours phone banking, just, getting for name recognition on Saturdays and Sundays. Every Saturday and Sunday, we have knocked doors. We have knocked over 3,000, maybe close to 3,500 doors so far. Just in my district alone. And then we do that for at least 2.5 hours every Saturday and every Sunday. And that's not to mention like going to every other event that you possibly could go to, you know. So it is literally 14,
Consuming.
16 hour days on top of the fact that I have a job as an educator to do too. So,
Hmm.
fortunately for me, it is summer, but I teach at a year-round school. So, first day back for the new school year for me is going to be July the 13th. I'm just also lucky that I have a superintendent, I have a principal, I have the backing of my school community. They know that that what I'm about, and they're encouraging this. So they support me and allow me to do what I need to do to try to get this win. But this is not for giggles. I can tell you that. And it's a lot of time away from your family. Um, and so that's the ultimate sacrifice. Is my daughter will be 4 on Friday. I don't know when this will air, but like uh, the amount of time that I have to spend away from my family to run a race to be competitive. You have to have that communication, that conversation with them. When I hear, probably the toughest thing is when I hear Harper say, "Daddy, don't leave,"
Mm.
right? And you're like, you have that moment of like, yeah, well, maybe I shouldn't leave. Is it worth it? Or Daddy, why do you have to go? And honestly, my answer,
What makes it worth it?
what makes it worth it is because, again, I look at who I'm fighting for. I'm fighting selfishly for my own family. I'm fighting selfishly for my daughter, who has less rights now than her mother did or her grandparents do. I'm fighting for every student that I've taught, every family that I have been a part of, and the struggles that I see that they go through on a day in and day out basis that educators across this state and really across the country deal with firsthand. And so what makes it worth it for me is knowing that I'm going to be able to make a much bigger impact of change for people than I currently can just in this one setting of what I do. And so that's what makes it worth it for me. So when I tell my daughter proudly, like I have to leave for you, I feel better internally knowing that she doesn't really understand it yet, but prayerfully, when we win and we're able to right the ship here, she'll be able to understand, if I didn't do this and we have another couple years of this, it's not going to be a great place for you to live. So that's why I do what I
Mhm.
do.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite quotes from Jimmy Carter, is that my faith requires that I do whatever I can for whoever I can for as long as I possibly can. And I think that the motive and the passion that arises in your heart when you're working for something that's larger than yourself is a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
So I have 3 questions that I like to ask, candidates, and I often tell people, and they say, "Well, how do I choose a candidate?" I said, "Well, ask yourself these 3 questions." So I wanna ask you these 3 questions. Um, but
Yep.
before I do that, let me give you the floor and just say, Levon, what would you like to tell the folks that are listening to this? Floor is
Well,
yours.
thank you again. I appreciate being on the show. Appreciate the conversation. Again, my name is Coach Levon Barnes. I'm running for North Carolina House 64 in Alamance County. I'm running because we need a working class champion in Raleigh. We need somebody who wants to bring humanity back into a General Assembly that has lost its sense of direction. I'm running because I'm one of you. Your kitchen table conversations are the same kitchen table conversations that I'm having in my own home. And so, um, about me, like we said in the beginning of the show, I'm just a regular guy. And I just feel like this is the best way for me to be able to make a difference. And with everybody's support, you can go visit my website at Levon, LE VON 4FORNC.com to learn more information about me. Throw some coins in the bucket because unfortunately campaigns are not ran for free, and I wish they would be. But we need more money, and that's part of that. And so I'm not taking any money from any corporations. I'm taking money from regular people, and I'm proud to say that regular people have showed up and showed out for this campaign. And so yeah, man, I'm one of you.
All right. So here's my 3 questions. Describe the world that you want to create by running for office, and is that a world that I would wanna live in?
I mean, the world that I would love to create, if given the opportunity, would be one that where you can be your best self, where your hard work and your effort can make your dreams come true, where we can get out of generational poverty and see what families look like when they are able to thrive and not just survive. Um, my world would be where we could breathe clean air, have safe drinking water, and we have we're surviving off of natural resources and not just oil that's polluting the world. So, and my world is so much fun. I want people to have so much daggone fun. I want them to be able to do what they feel that's going to give them joy. Bring out the inner child again. And so I want that. I think we need to be smiling more. So I think I might have a rule where you must smile at least once or twice a day. If I could create a law for that, and just have some fun. And I think that's the kind of world that I think anybody would want to be able to be a part of.
Well, that's the kind of world I would wanna live in. My second question, do you think that your campaign appeals to our better angels or our well-needed concerns and fears about things?
I think this campaign definitely is centered on the better of people and not living off of the fear of ideology. I strive myself to be a bridge builder and to see the best in people and meet people where they're at. Um, I don't want to live in a world where I have to be fearful of somebody who puts their pants on the same way that I do. I want to be able to live in a world where, you know, I'm able to have a conversation with you about what your hopes and your dreams are, and and your success ultimately could be the world's success. And so I don't want to live in that type of world where I have to constantly be looking over my shoulder or be fearful because somebody said this is this and that's that. Nah, my campaign is about human beings empowering each other, about bringing back community, about making sure the next generation has opportunities, and that we ultimately could be the best North Carolina that I know we can be.
And my last question is one about inclusion versus exclusion. And the question is, do you think that a more inclusive culture, society benefits everyone, or is inclusion some kind of code word for giving um, certain people an advantage?
I think the more people that we build community with, we all are better for it. America has been I mean, we've always heard that America is the melting pot
Hmm.
of the world. Where I'm fortunate enough to have lived in New York and grown up in New York, where we have like literally every type of nationality, race from all across the world. And you know what? We all have had dinner at each other's house, whether it's Rosh Hashanah dinner, Hanukkah dinner, whether it's during St. Patty's Day, and whatever. We all ate at everybody's house. That was one of the blessings of living in a diverse world, where maybe there could have been some like cultural gaps, and there are cultural gaps, but we all were able to share a meal. And through that meal, we
Hmm.
all had a good old time and had good conversation. So inclusivity is something that I would love to see. I don't like exclusivity. Um, I think everybody can have a seat at the table. Um, it's just a matter of, do you want to sit at the table? If you don't want to sit
Yeah,
at the
right.
table, then I guess you excluded yourself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay, well, Levon, thank you for your time and sitting here and answering these questions. I think you certainly gave everyone an opportunity to get to know you better, from the childhood and the tragedy that you went through, and all of the community that came together to raise you up, and all of those values it installed in you, and the like. And I think that we just have a much better idea of who you are.
absolutely.
Now it's up to the listener and it's up to the voter to decide it's just the kind of person that you want to represent you. Thanks so much.